Thank you so much for coming to the ACT Candidate Forum for the elections in March. Many of you know ACT and are members, and that's great. I'll give a little background on ACT, but I am Felicia Williams. I'm the co-chair of ACT, along with my other co-chairs, Linda Santel and Anthony Portantino. And this forum is put on by ACT, which is a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization that was started in 1973. And the purpose of ACT is twofold. One, it's to support progressive issues and progressive candidates. And secondly, it's to get people involved in democracy, which is why you all are here tonight for the Candidate Forum. So we have more information on ACT outside. Please join, become a member, and get involved. It's a great organization. And without further ado, I'm going to introduce the moderator who will go through the program. And it is our ACT co-chair, our former Assembly member, Anthony Portantino.
Thank you, Felicia, and again, I want to introduce Linda Santel. We are the three co-chairs of ACT, so welcome tonight to hear our our school board candidates first. And I do want to do a little housekeeping. I want to give a big shout out to Bob Miller and PCC for co-sponsoring the event, so let's give it up for PCC for being our co-sponsor. Myung Paik, our volunteer timekeeper, so let's give it up for Myung. We have Barbara Paul, who has been stage managing everything, so we'll give it up for Barbara Paul. Again, Felicia and Linda for organizing the event, along with Marilee Marshall, the research committee chair, so let's give it up for the ACT folks who work so hard. And with that, we're going to go right into the ground rules of our first forum. There are no opening or closing statements. I trust that each candidate will be able to weave their own stories into the answers throughout the night. Since we have 3 forums back to back, we want to have as many questions as we can. Time permitting, we'll keep asking questions. The next forum is going to start at 7:30. Candidates will have a maximum of 2 minutes to answer each question. Our timekeeper has a 1 minute, 30-second, and a stop button. If you don't stop, I'll cut you off. In addition to our 2-minute answer questions, we have a series of what I call rapid-fire one-word answer questions. They'll either be one-word answer or yes or no, and again, we will stick to that. There's also, I believe, one 30-second question, and then we'll finish with a final 2-minute question before we move on to the mayor's race. One interesting thing we're going to do tonight, each candidate will have one opportunity to direct a question to another candidate. They don't have to use it, but if at any point during the night a candidate wants to redirect a question to another candidate, they can interrupt or just let me know and I'll let them ask their question, and then the candidate that gets asked the question will have 1 minute to answer that question. So in that case, we'll just do a 30-second warning and a stop warning. Again, candidates don't have to use that, but they'll each have 1 minute to answer the final question. So with that, our candidates are from District 2, Roy Bagurjian is here with us tonight. Evan Dager is here with us tonight. And Marcela Rojas sent her regrets. She had a work commitment. In District 4, we have Patrick Callahan. And Sandra Saraganian sent her regrets that she was under the weather tonight. We also have Lawrence Torres from District 6. So with that, are we ready, Madam Timekeeper? We're going to go to the first 2-minute question, and we're going to start with Roy. We're going to work down the line, and then Evan, you will get the second question first. You'll get the third question first. You'll get the fourth question first, and we'll just keep rotating through. Okay? First question for Roy. How would you increase cooperation between the school district and the city council? Do you think there is a problem that needs to be solved?
Well, Collaborate Pasadena is already in the works, and it's good, going good, but I think that we should hire 1 or 2 full-time staff to help build the bridges between not only the city and PUSD, but also with PUSD, city, business community, the nonprofits, the museums, the social service organizations, and so on. So that is a we need to think about, and this collaboration in between the board members has to be improved, as we all have heard and know that in the past we've had non-cooperative or non-collaborative members, so we want to bring that cohesiveness together, and together with the superintendent we will do a good job.
Okay. Evan?
I happen to agree with Roy on this matter. Collaborate Pasadena is a good program. It has the city and the district working together to cut out redundancies and streamline the funds and how certain aspects of schooling would be taken care of, such as daycare. So I think Collaborate Pasadena is like your best bet at this point. It's sort of an inchoate program, but it's underway, and I would help to promote that.
Thank you. Patrick?
I don't want to pile on, but the city and the school district are doing a few things well already to collaborate. In the Democrats Pasadena Foothills Forum last week, I was gratified to hear all of the city council and mayoral candidates that showed up expressed an interest in establishing a better relationship with the school district when asked. So that points to the upcoming relationship being possibly very, very positive. In addition, since the board is going to have a very large turnover, we're going to have at least 3, maybe 4 new members if Tyrone wins his city council seat race. And that will introduce a lot of opportunities, I think, for a change in the existing dynamic. I do think that the city council members and the school district members need to cooperate through the various neighborhood associations. The neighborhood associations are very strong community organizations, and leveraging those is, I think, a great way to get the city and the district to work well together.
Thank you.
I also think that it's important that we use agencies as well as elected officials to improve our schools. Sierra Madre, where I live and is part of my district, has strongly come forward. The mayor has come forward and said we are interested in doing whatever it is we can to help the schools. It's critical that elected officials of whatever capacity in our city support our schools. Schools are community resources, and they're our gift to our children. And I think it's vital that we find a way to work together. And as Patrick said so eloquently, I think that with turnover in the school board, turnover in the mayor's office, and the collaborativeness that we can develop together as we all come into these new positions, it's actually very exciting.
Thank you. Our next question, and Evan will get it first, is of all the services and functions the school district must perform, what do you think it does well?
I think given the circumstances of the district and how they are strained for budget and enrollment, I think they do an excellent job. I was looking at the California rankings for the high schools and secondary schools in the district. Marshall, for example, ranks rather high. However, John Muir ranks rather low. And I think that disparity needs to be looked at. Obviously, something is being done right at Marshall, so why can't we not take these programs and replicate them at John Muir? One of the things I like most about Marshall is that they have after-school programs that keep the kids there longer to work on it, to work on their schoolwork, should they choose. They also have a music program at Elliott, which is a middle school, but it's done through an adjunct committee that's not really part of the school, but it's become integrated with it. I'm a high school teacher at Temple City High School. I teach science there now for 10 years. And one of the major differences between Temple City High School and the high schools that I see in Pasadena is that the school district in Temple City is basically like the proudest part of Temple City as a community. I don't necessarily see that in Pasadena, but I would like to see that be promoted a little bit more, that kind of dual identity. That's it, Anthony.
Okay,
Same question.
Patrick?
I think probably the biggest strength of the district is not at the ed center level, it's at the individual school sites. We have quite a few really excellent principals, and the teachers on staff are fantastic. The school tours that Penn has been doing for years now have convinced a lot of parents to give public schools a try because they've walked through these classrooms and they've seen these teachers in action teaching their classes, and they're saying to themselves and to their spouses and to their kids, these are good teachers. They're good teachers who can teach the material well. So as far as that goes, to the extent that the district has enabled a lot of site autonomy, I think that's been largely a success. It's enabled the individual school sites to come up with signature programs that have been very successful. It's enabled the principals to make decisions with the existing parent community in terms of how the discretionary funds are spent through the school site council setup, which I'm a member at Longfellow. And I think that makes the parent community feel even more invested in how the school is operating. And people feel like they have some say in how the money is being spent at the individual school site, and that increases a lot of trust. So I would like to see the district continue on that vein. I don't think that the district should try and impose too many changes from the top all the way down. So having the individual principals be empowered to make those sorts of decisions about what sort of programs they want to have on their sites, I think is great. And to the extent that the district can enable that, I think we should continue.
Thank you. Lawrence?
Well, first, thank you for asking that question. You know, we've gone to a number of these forums, and we're often asked, you know, what are you going to do to fix the schools? And I'm a school teacher. I've been a teacher for almost 30 years in LA Unified. My children have gone through PUSD. My daughter right now is a junior at Pasadena High School. And I have to say that the education my children have received has been extraordinary. And one of the real strengths of, I think, the district is the people who are in the district. It's staffed with professional, caring folks. From the classified folks, through the teachers, through administration, through school board members. I have found, as I have interacted with different aspects of throughout my campaign, that people care deeply about this school. And I also have to say, one of the real strengths, I think, also is the community. And the community that comes here to listen to school board folks talk. I appreciate that because it shows incredible dedication to what's so important about our community, and it's our children.
Good. Roy?
We have done very well with the successful programs like the Dual Language Immersion Program, the App Academy, our elementary schools that have very good results, sometimes as good or if not even better than private schools. We, believe it or not, we have done better than other districts in Common Core standards. We have a written curriculum aligned with the Common Core standards. We provided, I keep saying we, I'm sorry, the PUSD has provided content, training, and face-to-face training to all teachers and administrators. And those are the good things we have done.
Okay, we're going to go on to the next question. We discussed what our candidates thought the school district was doing well, and our next question for Patrick will be, what do you think the school district is doing poorly that you would like to see them do better?
Probably the two areas in which our school district is underperforming are in closing the gap in early childhood education. We've tried as a district, the class size reduction efforts in first through third have been fantastic. It would be great if we could do more. We have a large number of Title I and EL kids and special needs kids and foster kids in this district, and it's the reason why our budget is now, thankfully, more from the state thanks to LCFF, but if you compare us to our neighboring districts, that's the big difference. We spend about the same amount in administration, we spend the same amount in facilities, we spend about the same amount per capita on all of those things. Where the disparity is we spend a lot more on student support services and we spend a lot more on transportation. And that's directly tied to the special needs kids. It would be nice that if we could do more of that. And aside from the moral obligation to take care of the special ed kids and the foster kids in particular, there's a legal obligation to give them services, and it's every person I've talked to that has gone through any special ed program anywhere says you have to fight to get the resources that you should be getting. I do see less of that here than I hear from friends of mine who live in other states and other cities in California. So I think the district does do a good job of that, but it's an area we need to improve.
Thank you. Lawrence?
You know, I'm a little frustrated, I think, at our district, and it has to do with closing the achievement gap as well. I had an experience when I was at Sierra Madre Elementary School. I've been on school site councils and school governance councils since 1998 up through today. And we had won an award, a title, when I first went to Sierra Madre Elementary, or sent my daughters to Sierra Madre, it was a Title I school. And I wanted to send my children there precisely because everybody was there. And they had, according to, I guess, the powers that be, had placed all the English learner children in English learner classes. And we decided that we were going to try something completely different and intermix as many of those children as we could. And it was incredibly successful, and we won an award. And if you drive by Sierra Madre Elementary, you'll see that award up on the wall. And then, of course, you know, come April or May, comes the school bureaucrats and say, well, you're out of compliance, and we need to change it. And I remember, I was a parent and said, that's absurd. How is it that we can do something like that? And he said, well, we're out of compliance. And it's just, and it didn't matter that we, had gotten this achievement award from the state. We had to go back to the way that things are. And I think that lesson really taught me that we need to think more intelligently, more strategically when dealing with at-risk populations, and that would be something I would really want to take a look at on the school board level.
Okay.
My turn?
Right?
I'm very excited to improve the marketing of our schools. I think that's an area that PUSD has to improve, the marketing. It's much better than most people think. All we hear are the negative aspects and the failures of PUSD, but we never hear the success stories that we have and we can create. So I think PUSD has to step up in that area. We also need to improve the curb appeal of our schools so that it becomes attractive. Now, Pasadena has one of the highest rates of private schools and way higher than the national average for students attending private schools. So if we get even close to the national average of students attending private and public, we will get more than 7,000 students back. So even if we get a fraction of that number, that's a huge number, and funds will be available. So we're going to work on that, work on the marketing aspect, our success stories, make our schools better, curb appeal, so the parents will be attracted and bring back the students. one more thing, thinking as an economist, if we can prove or show that we can come close to what private schools are offering, well, it's simple economics. The free is much better than the expensive. There's a saying in another language says, what's sweeter than honey? And the answer is vinegar if it's free. Thank you.
Thank you. Evan?
When I talk to the parents of the students that I teach, one of the common complaints that I hear is that there isn't enough personalized attention to the students or even communication with the households. This is a direct result of the overworked aspect of the workers at each school site. I myself have 164 students on my roster. If I gave each one of them 5 minutes of my day, I wouldn't talk to all of them between the bells. It's one of those things where the student-to-teacher ratio is so large that teachers cannot get to figure out the individual needs of each student. Patrick mentioned earlier that they do a pretty good job inside the district when it comes to the student ratio at the earlier grades. We need to ensure that that kind of program gets expanded and amplified. If you are a teacher at all, if you know anything about education, there's very little dispute. Most of the research-based evidence when it comes to education and student-to-teacher ratios shows you that the fewer students there are in the classroom, the better their learning curves are and the higher the teacher effectiveness is. It is what we need to do. It is the solution. I don't think anyone would really dispute that. Not parents, definitely not teachers. We need to focus on decreasing the student-to-teacher ratio. We need to divert funds from programs that are atrophying, that aren't being promoted properly, and we need to find our way to get a student-centered program going by facilitating the teachers so that they can address the individual needs of each student.
Thank you. Our fourth question goes to Lawrence. Do you agree with the way our school district is spending its money? And if not, what changes or shifts would you make to the budget or to budget priorities?
I'm on the school site council at Pasadena High School, and at the end of last year, Pasadena High School was not a Title I school, and so one of the things the school site council does is it allots categorical funds that are given to certain population groups, and because of the new funding formula that came through the local control funding formula. The state had decided that instead of sending money directly to schools, that what they would do is they would just attach the money to the children. And so, and it's all based on sort of free and reduced lunch applications and those sorts of things. And so when I came to Pasadena High School this year to look at our funding, I expected it to be substantially higher, and it was not. And it immediately raised a red flag to me that said there should be more funding available at the local school site. I know at my school we had a large increase because of the way that this was done, and it caused me to question some of the way that school budgets are being done. And you know, I'm not suggesting there's anything. Any malfeasance or anything like that. I know that's a big topic here these days, but it does question whether or not the budget priorities of the district are the budget priorities of the schools, and it would be something I would really want to take a look at.
Okay. So we've just, oh no, that's our first one, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Our next question goes to Roy. Same question. Do you agree with the way our school district spends its money? And if not, what changes or shifts would you make to the budget or to budget priorities?
I believe PUSD spent most of the additional funding of the local control funding formula for the transition to the Common Core standards, and I agree with that. And it's, I think, as I said before, it needs to spend some more money in marketing and improving schools, maybe maintenance and operations. That's my answer.
I agree with what Larry had said about the LCFF funding. There's a new budget law that basically says that what were once earmarked funds, maybe for technology, maybe for special ed, are now sort of all put inside of one big general fund. This makes the discrimination of where the funds go a lot harder to discern, not only among the board members, but among the administration. One of the big changes that I think needs to be made is for there to be an equation for the workers in the district, for all the bargaining units, for CSEA employees and for the Teachers Association, as well as the Teamsters, an equation in their contract, let's just say arbitrarily that 80% of the budget goes to labor, which is to be expected. If you look at any business, most of the money goes to paying the employees. Right now, it's a very rigid system, and when budget cuts arrive, the district has to make a decision to cut, let's say, teachers. But this winds up impacting everybody, because if they cut 5 teachers, the 100 or so students that those teachers are attending to have to be then put into other classrooms, which compromises the teaching ability of the teachers in those rooms and the learning curves of the students that are also currently in that room. One of the ways to get around this is to create an equation that says, here's the priority of spending, on what categories it will be spent in this case it would be for labor expenses, and that 80% doesn't change, although the absolute value may change given certain years where there's more or less spending. This also creates a lot of free time because the negotiation over those types of things, they just don't get in the way and eat up all the man hours. I think one of the principal things to save us all that headache is to create that equation. Could be a COLA equation, could be another kind.
Okay, we've gone through 4. Everybody's gone first. We're going to go to some, wait, you still have to go. My mistake.
I do have to answer.
Yes, go ahead. My mistake.
That's okay. This is not really a question that you can answer in 2 minutes. I'm a reasonably intelligent guy, and I have spent a lot of time trying to decipher the budgetary documents that are available, both at the PUSD website and the Measure TT Oversight Committee website. And one of the problems that we have is, as everyone mentioned, we've switched from mostly categorical funding to a lot of discretionary funding, which means many of the things that in previous years were paid for out of categorical funds are now being paid for out of discretionary funds. But that means there is no reasonable way to look at this year's proposed budget and compare it to previous years to see if it's reasonable, because a lot of the numbers have just changed so wildly. In one example, there was one account number on one part of the discretionary budget that had been $4 million for 3 years running in the last 4 years. And then last year, it was at the end of the year for the upcoming proposed initial budget, it was down to $1.4 million. And then the interim budget, that number jumped to $6.7 million. And there's nothing in the budget documents that I've seen that tells you why that number's gone up so much. I happen to know Kim Kenny. She's come to the DAC meet. I'm on DAC. We've hung out together at meetings quite some time. And I emailed her and said, Kim, why did this number go up this much? And she said, oh, well, what happened was funds that had been coming in that were earmarked for special ed transportation, that categorical fund was gone. And the way that we decided to solve that problem in the discretionary budget was to just put it on that account number. So that's great that there's an answer, but it's not great that you need to know somebody who's actually sitting on the board and know that they will respond to your email in a timely fashion to get that answer.
Thank you. Very good answers, candidates. At our 4 question mark, since Kim Kenny was mentioned, I see she walked in. Where's our school board member? Kim Kenny is here, and also Dr. Mann from the PCC Board of Trustees. So thank you both for being here. We are going to go to our rapid fire questions. We're going to start with Lawrence. These are one-word answer questions, and I know the candidates were thinking about these. Wait. Who did I miss? Oh, Elizabeth Pomeroy is here from the school district as well. Thank you, Elizabeth. We have our first question, Lawrence. Are you an ACT member?
No.
Patrick?
No.
Nope.
Yes.
Yes, okay. Should the PUSD have more, and Patrick, you'll get this one first. Should the PUSD have more language immersion classes, yes or no?
Yes.
Yes.
Roy?
Yes.
Yes.
See, I told you these guys aren't that tough. And Evan, you get this one. Are you or have you been a PTA member, yes or no?
I'm not a parent, no.
No.
PTA?
PTA.
For 14 years. I have been.
Yes, for 6 years.
All right, one word. Okay, who gets this one?
Oh,
Roy
yes.
gets this one. Do you have children currently, or have you had children previously attend public school?
No.
Yes.
Yes.
No.
No.
I have dogs.
Okay. Now, this was going to be a one-word answer, but I realize it probably should have more time. I'm going to give you a minute on this one, and Evan goes first, right? No.
Okay.
Who just went first last time?
Patrick.
Patrick.
No, me. I went first.
You went first, so yes.
I'm hogging all the mics.
We went so fast,
you
I
should
lost
go
my
first.
notes. So Patrick, who did the PTA first?
You did PTA.
I
Okay,
did PTA,
Roy goes first. Roy,
I answered
do you
first.
support the parent trigger, yes or no? 1 minute.
No.
Do you can expand, that's it.
Oh, all right.
No?
Let me give, I said no, yes, but
Okay.
you want me to
You have 1 minute if you want. You can
No.
explain why?
No,
No,
definitely
okay, I was giving you guys more time. The
No.
parent trigger.
No.
No.
The parent trick, do I explain? No.
You can explain if you want.
Hell no.
Hell no. All right, I'm just trying to be fair. Do you
okay.
support the parent trigger?
I'm glad we got a minute for this one. Conceptually, I think there are some arguments to be made for a law like that. As implemented, I don't think it works very well. It does have some positive side effects that are actually unintended, in that schools that are in trouble have to make real steps to improve their relationships with their parent community. So as that incentive has gone in, it's made some of the bad schools better, not in our district, but statewide. But generally speaking, no.
All right, Lawrence.
Yeah. You know, the real problem, again, is the shiny new bauble always seems to be the better thing. The difficulty with the entire charter school issue is you won't know what you're getting until 20 years from now, because that's when the actual results of how well the education that was completed at that school was done. And it's troubling that you know, we're looking at such draconian measures as a way of improving something that may be improved with other measures.
All right. Since charter schools were brought up, we're going to go to Roy. We're going to start our 2-minute questions again. Here's the question. Approving and overseeing charter schools seems to cause a great deal of controversy in the PUSD. What's your position on charter schools, and how would you improve the current approval, implementation, and oversight process? Roy, 2 minutes.
Yeah. Charter schools started a long time ago as experiment to see what works, and alternative for parents to see if they can try something else. And if it works, it was supposed to be implemented in public schools, but things changed. And then it became another political issue. It's okay if it's a few, but more than that is too much. They tend to skim the better, or I would not say better, the high not high functioning, the more excited students. But research has proven that if we have a mixture of high achieving and not so high achieving, highly engaged and not so highly engaged students in a classroom, not only the less achieving students will benefit, but also the better ones, the high achieving. Because if we give them the opportunity to tutor and mentor the other kids, research research has proven that if you teach something, you understand it better. So it's a mutual benefit, and I believe that we can do that and not have necessarily to go to charter schools.
Evan?
I'm against charter schools on principle. I believe in public education. I believe that the commonwealth and that the common funds should be put into the public sphere. Charter schools are kind of a third-way politics where you redirect money and you put it into the hands of private entrepreneurs, and they make a lot of money through regulatory capture. And as Roy was implying there, what happens is they take the student that is easier to manage. The district has something like 31% English language learners. It has about, I think I read 15% IEP, which implies special ed, 15% of the population. These are resource-intensive students. So when your charter schools skim off the students that's easier to teach and they can discriminate on who they service, then what you find is that the public schools are burdened more and more and more. You need to return to a more robust public sphere. You need to redirect those monies, and you need to make sure that tax dollars are spent on public education. It is our intellectual infrastructure we're talking about, right? We need to invest in it.
Thank you. Patrick?
Unlike Evan, I'm not ideologically opposed to charter schools. In practice, I'm opposed to the way most of them are implemented, for most of the reasons that he gave. The charter school movement has been very popular in America. It gives communities that have underserved school populations the illusion of choice. They don't uniformly improve outcomes. They have a tendency to take the students that are already advantaged, and effectively what you're winding up with is a publicly subsidized private school that in many cases has used testing or parent interviews or demographics or any one of a number of dodges around state or federal law to pick the students that they have. Now, there are some charters that do a good job, and that's usually because they are targeting a particular population that has either escaped the public school infrastructure or is not well suited to the same sort of needs as the rest of the population. An example of that in Pasadena is Learning Works. Learning Works gets kids who have already dropped out. So the system has already failed them. And in that case, you can have a charter that has an effective mission that partners with the district to do something positive. That's a hard barrier to jump over, to convince me that if you're coming to me as a board member and you're asking me to approve a charter, you're going to have to show me that you're going to meet needs of students in the district that aren't being met already by the district schools. You're going to have to show me that you can produce better outcomes, and that's a hard thing to do.
Thank you. Lawrence?
Well, sort of full disclosure, Mike LaRon, the principal of Learning Works, is my campaign chair, so I guess I'm going to have to say I am for charter schools. But having said that, it's for a very specific population. And again, my daughter works at Learning Works, and she's a tutor at Homeboy Industries. And charter schools like that are very mission-driven, and they serve a very specific need within the community. The difficulty with charter schools and oversight is once you charter a school, they don't have to stay within your city, right? They can kind of ooze out. And there are, let's say, storefront charter schools where teachers don't have to be credentialed to work with your children. I'm going to say this because I know it. I know Options for Youth, which does have a presence here in Pasadena. It has a charter out of Burbank, and there's no oversight within that PUSD would have of them. If we have complaints, we would have to go to Burbank and talk with their school board. So sort of the sort of, it's not globalization, but statization, if you will, of charter schools is a real, I think, it's a real issue, and I think it's one we have to be very careful about. And if we were to be presented with charters, you would want to look very carefully at plans and outcomes and things like that. And I think it again works very well with specific population groups.
All right. Everybody had a chance on that one. All right, so for the 2014-2015 academic year, the PUSD had 395 foster youth and allocated only $53,000 in new funds to support programs. Pomona spends significantly more, although they have fewer foster students. Do you support using local control funding formula funds from the state to support programs for low-income English language learners and foster youth designed to improve their academic performance? Or what specific actions would you take as a member of the PUSD to improve the academic performance of our most needy students? And Evan goes first.
Right. So this is a question of equity in general. One of the things that we know as educators, if you read the research literature on education, is that equity is the thing that makes learning possible. If you have a hungry student, you need to feed that student before you can get to the books, right? If you have a sick student, you need to treat them, give them health care before you can get them to the books. So while the foster youth issue is an individual particular issue, I'd like to broaden it to the issue of equity, right? So I'm going to go back to the student-teacher ratio to demonstrate why equity is a difficult thing to provide. Again, if I have 164 students on my daily roster, how much individual attention can I possibly afford them as a teacher, right? We know that these foster youths deserve extra attention and have very specific and special needs. Almost all individuals do, in one way or another. So how do we address them? You must give them more time. You must create a relationship. Teaching is not just the presentation of information. Teaching is a psychological game. It is a social game. It is a relationship game. You must build the team with your student. So as much as I understand that the foster youth is an issue here, I would argue that a lot of the LCFF funds should go to reducing class size ratio. I also want to point out that the role of the board is to interface with the community and is to understand where they want to prioritize those funds, and then it is up to us to prioritize those LCFF and LCAP funds in the way that the community wants. So I'm going to split my answer that way. It's for equity, Dr. Mann, right? And we want these foster youths to have the best chance, so we have to meet their needs.
Thank you. Patrick?
So again, this is one of those moments where you're not certain by looking at last year's budget versus this year's budget exactly how much additional or non-additional funds has gone to foster kids. Because of the discrepancy between discretionary and categorical spending, it's difficult to look at last year's numbers and this year's numbers and say anything reasonable about how much we are or aren't spending on a school community, on the district level documentation. You have to go to the school sites. You have to go to the schools where the foster kids are. You have to talk to the site councils and the PTAs and the parents and the principals and find out what their needs actually are. One of the common complaints I'm hearing from people, I've been calling various school sites and asking them about their Measure TT projects because the Measure TT website is out of date. And a common complaint that I hear from them is they don't hear news from the district. The existing board is disconnected from that community, I think, to some degree. And improving those relationships will give us a better idea of what the needs actually are on the school sites. So we have to go to these sites and we have to talk to the people and say, what do you need? What are you not getting? And if we can't get the money because we are under budget, we need to find a partnership organization to help. But we do definitely need to distribute the appropriate amount of funds to all of the disadvantaged populations.
All right, Lawrence?
You know, this is a population that's near and dear to my heart. I spent probably a decade working at St. Anne's, which is now a residential home for pregnant and parenting foster children. I'm sorry, pregnant and parenting teenagers who are in the foster care population. And in working with those girls, many of them had been to 14, 15, 18 different schools. And how many times can you start English 9A over again before you just give up? And there needs to be a pathway for our most at-risk children to be able to get out of school. 60% of all foster care children, when they age out of the foster care system, go homeless in Los Angeles. That's an appalling statistic. We need to do whatever we can to work with our most needy populations. I mean, that's a moral right.
Roy?
Some of the funds are being used for foster kids, LCFF funds, but as you mentioned, we need to readdress and review and address that issue even more. If we take care of the foster kids and all other low-income kids, let's say, we make sure that they attend, we make sure that they are healthy, we make sure that they're getting enough nutrition, the ADA, average daily attendance, will increase, and that will bring funds. So it's kind of an investment. It's not a loss of money. But I want to say something. The more I participate in these forums, the more I realize how little I know. And this question was posed to us in another forum, and Dr. Mann, I think, is the right person to go to. I'm planning to go visit her and find out all about this.
Okay. We're getting short on time, so I'm going to see how long this next question takes, which potentially is our final question. And our first questioner would be Evan, and the question is, if you were king, what 3 specific things would you do to improve the PUSD? You don't have to get board approval. What would you implement to make a difference?
I don't think there's a question of what we ought to do. I think the answers are out there. I think that if you, like my strength is in research and in education and in pedagogy, right? This is my career. And we know what works. You can look at the Finland model. I'm sure some of you understand that it's a premier school system, fully socialized, fully funded, high equity, with individualized attentions to every student, early intervention when it comes to classifying them as special ed, and early resources being diverted to them. It is not a mystery what works. Maybe it sounds like I'm beating my drum when it comes back to the student size ratio, but we know that works. Very few times in politics, and when it comes to practical issues, complex issues like something like education, very few times do you have something that can be even considered a magic bullet, right? If you lower classroom size, you give them individualized attention, you discover more quickly what their learning curves are, you discover their personality types, you discover their disadvantages at home, right? I have brothers, twin brothers that I teach science to. Right? They have different needs. They are twin brothers in the same household. All right? We are all the same, and we are all very different. And when you're teaching individuals, the way to understand who they are is inside of a relationship. And if it sounds soft or woo-woo, it's just that is what the research is. How would I implement changes if I could do anything I want? I would cap all classroom sizes at the high school level at 16. That's what I would do. I would have on-site nurses, on-site librarians. I would have free Wi-Fi for the community, right? These are all things that are within reach, and it's a matter of political will. And there's not much that a school board can do, because we're going to hit walls with budgets. It will take a community to start speaking up.
Thank you. Patrick.
Do I get to change the city laws as well, or just the district policies?
I'm leaving that to your discretion.
I think that the first thing I would do is probably try and find an adequate successor, because that's usually the problem with tyranny is it usually doesn't transfer hands very well. I think that there's a number of things the district can do that would produce much greater benefit for the amount of money that it would cost to get done. For example, there are a lot of great parent-involved communities at the individual school sites that do the best they can for their individual school sites. They do a great job at the individual school sites. They don't have much in the way of district support. The Family Resource Center has basically been gutted. And I understand why that happened. From budgetary constraints, cutting at the district level is probably better than cutting at the individual school site level. But as funds come in now, that would be one of the things that I would want to rebuild, because that makes a huge difference. When the parents have to jump through hoops in order to get a badge so that they can volunteer on the school site, you have put a very large burden in front of a free resource that costs you no money to implement. You just need to get those people their TB tests, and that's an unacceptably long period of time right now. So that's one of the first things I would do. The second thing I would do is improve, I really think we need to improve trust with the overall community, particularly given the recent events in the city. It's going to be very hard to get people to support anything public in the next 6 months because their first gut impulse is going to be, have you done an audit recently? I think one of the best ways to do that is to improve the communication. We need better communication. We need to provide some sort of incentive for the principals, for the office managers, for the people at the district office. We need to survey the parents. We need to find out why parents are sending the kids to the schools that they're sending them to. Oh, sorry, I'm out of time.
I was going to give you 10 more seconds because I gave him 10 more seconds, but you finished. Okay.
Can I say something else?
No. Lawrence,
I get to be the king? Is that what you said?
you get to be the king.
All right, excellent. First thing I would do is I'd raise teacher salaries. The reason is not so I can get more money. I don't even work in this district. But when I first started teaching in LA Unified, I think I made $26,000 a year. And I know, I feel like Emily Newhart from the Newhart Show. And they gave a substantial raise when I first started. And the quality of teacher that was coming in to teach in El Sereno, where I was at, was extraordinary. The type of vibrancy and caring, it was remarkable, and that has always stayed with me. I will say, as a teacher, I've always dreamed of sort of the Russian model, the old communist model. What they used to do there was they bring all the parents in, and for teacher conferences, they put them all in the chairs, and the teacher would sit there and yell at them, make sure, But I would probably also start school later. Kids don't want to get to school at 8 o'clock in the morning. That's not their sort of, their modus operandi. If we started school at noon, and it's funny because school is set up the way it is for the adults. It's not for children. That's true. And so it's sort of looking outside of the box and saying, okay, well, what can we do differently that puts children at the center? And I think the third thing I'd want to do is increase the pathways that students can choose to exit schools, right? To leave school with a diploma. In LA Unified, we're going all A through G, so everybody will be able to attend a four-year university. I think we need to look at different ways that children can get out.
Thank you. Roy, our final...
You said king, right? Not God.
King.
King.
I would get all our public schools to be magnet schools of some kind, some concentration like math, science, arts, music, etc. I would like to have all our graduates have the skills needed for the 21st century, critical and creative thinking, communication skills, both verbal and written, and collaboration, teamwork. And I would like our graduates have or be fluent in at least one other language than English to be ready to compete in the global economy. That's my wish.
Thank you. Hey, let's give it up for our school board candidates.
Oh, no. Good job.
They did an awesome job. I always say when you look at local government and schools, It's very hard to be a school representative because you deal with people's children, and people are a lot more passionate about their children than their front yards. So I admire anybody who runs for school board. We're going to switch and bring up our mayoral candidates again. Thank you, school board candidates, for your wonderful answers.